Right now at 10, Wisconsin is being gripped by frigid temperatures, while protesters brave the cold to march on the state capitol anyway. And sweeping changes are proposed for Wisconsin's prison system. The impact that could be felt throughout the state. Plus, concerns continue to rise over the ongoing bird flu outbreak. What doctors are saying about the potential for our food supply to be infected. That's all coming up on News 3 Now at 10. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Carlson. Thanks so much for joining us. Eric Franke is off tonight. It is bitterly cold outside, very bitter, with wind chills creating alert day conditions. And that will last until at least Wednesday. Meteorologist Jacob Montesano has more on these dangerously low temperatures. Keeps getting lower.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's actually going to get worse before it gets better because tomorrow morning will likely be colder than what it was this morning. And as you mentioned, alert day conditions are going to continue through at least Wednesday. Still going to be cold a little bit later in the week, but it's not going to be quite as cold after Wednesday. So taking a look at the current temperatures, they are already below zero. In some cases, they're in the negative double digits. And these are just the actual temperatures. Wind chills are even worse. And looking at the current wind speeds, not quite as windy as it was earlier, but still a little bit breezy out there for a lot of southern Wisconsin. Wind speeds up around 10 miles per hour. So we're already talking about wind chills in the negative 20s at this hour. And it's obviously going to continue to get worse overnight. Now, before I talk about that, I do want to point out that some areas well off to the north, including areas near the Arctic Ocean, are actually warmer than it is here in Wisconsin. How about the 32 is the current feels like in Anchorage, and we are 52 degrees below that. At least the wind chills are. So that goes to show you just how cold it is here in southern Wisconsin. Overnight, low temperatures will drop into the negative teens and wind chills will be even lower. I'll talk more in detail about that coming up a little bit later.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jacob. And a nationwide. Despite these frigid temperatures, hundreds of people gathered at the Capitol protesting what they believe to be injustices done by President Trump, his administration, and Elon Musk. This is part of a nationwide protest titled "Not My President." Here in southern Wisconsin, we are facing temperatures well below zero, as you just heard, and we spoke with one Madison resident about why there was such a large turnout despite the temps.
The injury that is being done by Musk and Trump and his whole squad are so extraordinary and so unprecedented. So for those of us who have children, I do, it's a concern for the next generation as well.
Now, this is the fourth President Trump-related protest at our state's capital since he took office. A snowmobiler fell through the ice at Lake Koshkonong over the weekend. Saturday, the Fort Atkinson Fire Department was called to the lake. Officials say that a man had been on the ice with his friend when the pair fell into the water. His friend was able to reach shore and call for help, luckily. Fire crews were able to then lift the man who fell onto the ice shelf, where a fan boat picked him up and brought him to shore. The man was taken to the hospital for treatment of hypothermia and has since been released. And the Dodge County Sheriff's Office is warning of an unsafe ice location at Beaver Dam Lake. This is after 3 snowmobiles fell through the ice. They say the area is near the south end of the lake, just north of Evergreen Island. On Saturday, deputies responded to 2 snowmobilers traveling together who went through the ice. Then, on Sunday, a lone snowmobiler fell through the same area. All 3 riders were uninjured. The sheriff's office asks residents to contact local bait shops for further information on ice depths as well as hazardous areas. Madison police arrested a man they say was involved in a shooting over the weekend. Saturday morning, officers were called to Dutch Mill Road for reports of a person with a gunshot wound. That man was taken to the hospital where he told officers he'd been shot near Sunnyvale Lane. The victim says he and the shooter know each other, and officers were able to find the suspected shooter and arrest him. He is being charged with recklessly endangering safety and possession of methamphetamine. The suspected shooter is being held in the Dane County Jail. The airline's plane flipped over while landing at Toronto's airport this afternoon, and a child is among the injured. Wendy Gillette reports on what happened.
We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down.
John Nelson posted this video on social media just after the crash that captured the scary and surreal scene.
Everybody, most people appear to be okay.
Flight attendants and passengers helped others on board crawl out of the upside-down aircraft. Medical helicopters and ambulances quickly responded. Firefighters sprayed down the plane right after it crashed. Delta Flight 4819 was operated by Endeavour Air en route to Toronto from Minneapolis. The airline says 76 passengers and 4 crew were on board.
There was no loss of life. And this is in due part to our heroic and trained professionals, our first responders at the airport.
The airport was shut down for several hours, but then resumed operations. Delta canceled all flights to Toronto for the remainder of the night. Weather could have played a factor in the accident. At the time, there were wind gusts of 40 miles per hour and blowing snow from 2 feet that fell in the past week.
Having flown in Toronto many times, it is challenging with the winter conditions. You have to be on top of icing situations, both for the runway, also for the aircraft. They're going to be looking at wind shears, possibly. Anything that could actually have turned the aircraft over like that.
The Transportation Safety Board of Canada will lead the investigation, with U.S. teams assisting. Wendy Gillette, CBS News.
Back home, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers is proposing an overhaul of the state's prison system. $325 million would go towards major renovation projects in order to change multiple facilities. That includes closing the embattled youth prison in northern Wisconsin called Lincoln Hills. Those inmates would move to smaller facilities across the state, including a new youth facility being built in Oregon. Governor Evers says that by renovating instead of rebuilding, it significantly reduces the price tag on the plan.
And we need Republican lawmakers to get on board with this plan. There's not an alternative to my plan that is safer, faster, and cheaper, period.
It's all about sitting down and having a conversation. So hopefully we'll get that going, get that conversation going.
Now, this is part of the governor's 2-year budget plan overall. We'll hear more when he delivers that budget address tomorrow. Now, this prison overhaul proposal also looks to add more workplace training at Waupun Correctional Institution. But reform advocates say more needs to be done. Now, under Evers' plan, Waupun would be transformed into a medium security vocational village, emphasizing on workforce readiness. This would help achieve the goal of stabilizing the state's prison population.
From what I've heard is it's at a state that it can never come back from as far as fixing. Being where Waupun is located, it is clear that they don't have the power to attract staff that they need for their prison.
Now, Waupun would temporarily shut down to demolish the existing cell halls. The Department of Corrections would then rebuild 600 cells at a cost of more than $245 million. The vocational village would not be ready for opening until at least 2031. Well, tomorrow is the spring primary election in the state of Wisconsin. It's Madison's first since the state's elections committee launched an investigation into unprocessed absentee ballots from November. The city clerk says they've taken extra precautions after 193 absentee ballots in Madison went uncounted due to what the Wisconsin Elections Commission is calling a serious oversight.
We've done training on using a new checklist at the polls on processing absentees. We've redesigned a lot of our materials. So at the polls tomorrow, the poll workers have additional test sheets for closing the polls to double check and triple check that everything's been processed. And then we have extra items that we're checking in the clerk's office at the end of election day as well.
Now, Madison will see primaries for 3 Alder districts, and then both Fitchburg and Sun Prairie have 1 district race. You can see a full sample ballot, check your polling place and more on myvote.wi.gov. And you can find in-depth conversations with each Department of Public Instruction candidate on channel3000.com or with the free Channel 3000 mobile app. Well, there's a troubling measles outbreak in Texas with 48 confirmed cases there. The CDC is reporting cases in 5 other states as well. That's why doctors are stressing the importance of getting vaccinated and noting symptoms that people need to be on the lookout for after exposure. Those include high fever, cough, runny nose, along with red and watery eyes. And then, about 2 to 3 days after those symptoms begin, little white spots can form inside the mouth, and patients may also see a rash.
When you do not get the vaccine, that is when you have the risk of hospitalization and death. And in this particular outbreak, we've already seen 3 people hospitalized out of 48. That's over almost 30%.
Recent polling shows about 17% of parents have skipped or delayed a vaccine dose for their child, and that's up from about 10% just 2 years ago. Doctors say they are seeing a lot of exemptions and concerns about vaccinations that are not warranted. Well, newer variants of the bird flu have some people worried about the safety of the food supply. It is unclear whether the newer bird flu variant poses a bigger threat to people, but the virus has been detected in cows right now. The danger of the virus spreading to the food supply remains low. However, doctors with the Cleveland Clinic say raw milk should be avoided.
We have not seen any human cases related to that, but since raw milk doesn't go through the pasteurization process, which is known to kill bacteria and viruses, there is the potential for transmission with raw milk products.
Experts say people who work on farms who have backyard flocks perhaps are at higher risk for being infected with bird flu symptoms. The virus in humans may include eye redness and other flu-like symptoms such as cough, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, and body aches. Well, if you're looking for a better night's sleep, it may start with a better diet. The National Institutes of Health says 50 to 70 million people struggle with sleep disorders. It's a lot of people. And that's also where your diet may be the best remedy. A new book called Eat Better, Sleep Better says the trick is eating more fiber and less saturated fat. So that means more fruits and veggies, plus nuts. Another tip is looking for foods high in tryptophan. Now that includes turkey, which in many people remember, it gets you better sleep on Thanksgiving and when you have it other times. And just a heads up, your sleep could be interrupted over these coming days as the Department of Defense will start evening training flights in the Madison area. You can hear it right there. The exercises will run beginning tomorrow through February the 28th, Friday. Now, homeowners could see or hear an aircraft taking off and landing about 7 p.m. each night, but the Wisconsin National Guard also says some flights have the potential to last until 2 in the morning. When we come back, Jacob tells us about when these bitterly cold conditions will finally come to an end. There is an end. And working towards peace, the negotiations underway to end wars in Gaza and Ukraine. That's all next.
You're watching News 3 Now at 10.
Welcome back. President Trump is pushing forward on 2 very big foreign policy plans. Today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with the Saudi Crown Prince to discuss peace deals to end the wars in both Gaza and Ukraine. Now, European leaders who have been shut out of negotiations met in an emergency session in Paris.
This isn't just about the front line in Ukraine, it's the front line of Europe and of the United Kingdom. It's about our national security, and I think that we need to do more.
The United Kingdom's Prime Minister said he was willing to put British troops on the ground in Ukraine in order to help enforce a peace deal. Dangerous winter weather, though, is threatening much of the country, with storms in Kentucky claiming 11 lives. Kentucky rescue crews have already saved at least 1,000 people stranded by floods. Parts of the state were drenched with up to 6 inches of rain. Kentucky Governor Andy Bashar said first responders have worked for days without sleep and implored residents to stay off the flooded roads.
It's very important today that we continue to remind folks not to drive through standing water, not to drive around barricades. They are there for a reason.
The troubles are far from over, though. An approaching snowstorm could dump as much as 6 inches. The governor calling this one of the most serious weather events in at least a decade. Well, the city of Madison has canceled its snow emergency, but alternate side parking rules are still in effect. The side of the street is determined by the date at 1 o'clock in the morning. So since tomorrow is an even numbered day, you should park on the side with even house numbers. On odd number days like today, drivers should park on the odd side of the street. And select snowmobile trails open today in Dane County. County officials say this is the first time this season they've had adequate snow conditions in order to open those trails. Riders are also being reminded to use caution as there may be uneven terrain, snowy covered icy sections, and potential for open water, as we've heard earlier in the newscast, marshes and waterways. Up-to-date information on trail openings and closings can be found on the Dane County Parks website. Well, alert day conditions are set to stick with us through Wednesday as wind chills remain well below zero. We have meteorologist Jacob Montesano. It is bad out there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's going to continue to get worse overnight, and there's not going to be a lot of relief for at least the next 48 hours or so. Alert day conditions continuing through Wednesday. It also will be dry for much of this week. We'll see some more precipitation next week, and it also will be a lot milder next week once we get there. So looking at the alert day information, morning wind chills between -20 and -30 are expected. I mean, wind chills are in that range right now for a lot of southern Wisconsin. It's going to continue to drop overnight. And once again, this will last through Wednesday. There are cold weather advisories in effect across all of southern Wisconsin, but extreme cold warnings just to the north and just to the west. And we're certainly not alone with this cold weather. Take a look at the amount of extreme cold warnings are in effect across the Midwest area, and entire states, Nebraska, North Dakota, Minnesota, the entire state under an extreme cold warning. So we are not the only state dealing with extremely below normal temperatures. Looking at the wind chill forecast, it could drop all the way down to -30 to -35 at times by sunrise tomorrow. Not really improving much during the day. I mean, it will improve, but it's still going to be bitterly cold with wind chills still in the negative teens, even at the warmest point tomorrow. Wednesday, more wind chills below zero in the -20s. Improving a little bit more for Wednesday afternoon. We could see some areas get above zero in the wind chill department, but then they're going to drop back below zero for Thursday morning, and it will get above zero for Thursday afternoon. But it does look like we'll see another below zero morning for Friday, and then for the weekend it's not going to be as bad. But when the wind chills do get this cold, we could see frostbite in as little as 20 to 30 minutes with exposed skin, especially during those morning hours. So if you have to be outside, definitely bundle up because this cold could definitely get dangerous if you're outside for a prolonged period of time. Here's the good news. This is the high temperature forecast for the next 10 days. 40s are in the forecast for a good chunk of next week at this point. You can see just a slow incline in the temperature starting Thursday and continuing through the weekend. Also want to mention that the snowfall we saw the last week or so, it helped a little bit to improve the gap that we've had from what we normally see to what we have seen this winter, but we're still well below normal in terms of snowfall. In fact, we're 16 inches below normal, and we're not going to see much snow this week. Here's a look at the snowfall forecast. There's not really going to be much of it. Really, the only question is whether we see cloud cover or clear skies, not really whether we see snow or not. We could see some snow showers in northern Wisconsin on Wednesday, but southern Wisconsin will be very dry until potentially next week. And once we get to next week, temperatures will be warm enough to where we could see some rain mixed in with the snow rather than just snow. So we're not really expecting much accumulation, although even snow lovers like myself definitely just going to take those temperatures next week because it is certainly very cold the next couple of days. But next week, it's going to feel like spring. We'll be right back.
Well, just before halftime of Wisconsin's win at Purdue, Kamari McGee was ejected from the game after what was, to say the very least, a questionable call. For a moment, losing their vocal leader took the wind out of Wisconsin's sails, but not for long. The team rallied and took down Purdue on the road, on national television, without one of their best players, and they're better for it.
We played for a little something more than just Wisconsin. It was for Kamari. And when we came into the halftime in the locker room, we saw him and we were like, we're going to go back out there. We're going to get the job done for you.
It meant a lot. And I could even speak on the celebration during the game. I was back there. I had it pulled up on my phone. And it was just loud. I'm sure the guys who are outside our doors at work at Purdue heard me yelling. I was yelling after every bucket. Anybody scored, I was yelling. So, just watching the team come through, it really meant a lot that they had my back.
And thanks to that big win, the Badgers just keep moving on up in the polls. They're up another 5 spots this week to 11th in the AP Top 25, the highest ranking for any team in the Big Ten. Certainly, Greg Gard's team is aware of all of this, but not because he told them.
I never said anything when we weren't ranked. I never said anything when we got ranked. I never said anything when we fell out of the rankings. That's outside opinion. All we can do is control, the results on the floor. And they know we've got a long ways to go yet. We got to continue to get better. It's great that it's great for our fans and our alums and obviously getting a lot of national attention right now. But in terms of the work that we have to put in every day, that doesn't change.
And they say this Badger team will go as far as John Tonje will take them. And right now, the transfer is on fire. He is averaging 24 points per game during Bucky's 6-game winning streak, including most recently a 32-point masterpiece at Purdue. For his efforts, he was named the Naismith National Player of the Week. Well, in 2025, college football looks a lot different than it even did 5 years ago. Players are getting paid to play, and the transfer portal created a frenzy. So because of this, many teams have moved to hire general managers rather than having a head coach juggle play sheets and spreadsheets and all. So last week, Wisconsin's football's general manager took a similar role at USC. So today, the school announced his replacement, Marcus Sedberry, who's been the school's deputy athletic director for the last 2 years. In this role, Sedberry will oversee roster management and player personnel and operations for the program. We'll be right back. You gotta love this one. A marsupial with the munchies has gone viral in Nebraska. This is a cutie. After being hospitalized, though, due to eating too many sweets, officials say this possum heisted an entire Costco chocolate cake by itself. Like, how? I don't get it. Well, it was found at a homeowner's back porch, panting heavily. Aw, surrounded by the cake's remains. Ugh. Officials say it will be fine, released following a little rehab, and social media users are sympathizing, saying when it comes to eating your feelings, sometimes an entire chocolate cake is really just what the doctor ordered. Don't you think?
Yeah, but I'm just surprised. I feel like, Costco usually just has bigger portions for everything. I feel like the size of the cake was probably the size of him.
I'm guessing.
I don't know how that all fit in his belly.
That happens a lot, like pets.
Yeah,
and
that must have been why he felt so bad. So.
Or maybe because of the cold.
Yeah, looking one final time at the forecast, alert days continuing through Wednesday morning at least, slowly warming up though by the end of the week, and next week is going to be a lot better with some chances of rain and snow.
All right, thank you, Jacob, and thanks everybody for watching News 3 Now at 10. Have a great night.